self-esteem.
That's the thing.
That's the thing. And not delusional self-esteem.
Okay.
If your 7-year-old loves Beyonce, but when she's running around the house singing, like literally you have to put earplugs in because it's the worst sound you've ever heard, it's probably a bad idea to tell her she can be Beyonce one day too. It's not a bad idea to say if she puts in a lot of work, she could be better at singing than she is today. These are so to me, it's self-esteem. Also, what do you compliment your kids on? If you're complimenting your kids constantly on how attractive they are, you're so beautiful, you're so cute, you're so handsome, you're instilling affirmation on that, which is gonna affect them when they're in their 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, because that's gonna be their self-worth. If you're telling them that they're remarkable because they're getting A's in school, you're teaching them to conform to systems that aren't real once they become 22. Might not be the best idea. 8th place trophies bother me, not because I'm so competitive, but because you're telling your kids that losing is bad. Like, kids are smart. Kids are smart. So they realize the reason they're getting an 8th place trophy is like you as the parent don't want them to feel losing. Losing is bad. The problem is losing is such a fundamental part of life that you're teaching kids to be scared of it instead of leaning into it. So I think for me it's practical self-esteem. Truth.
What do you compliment your kids on?
Their humanity. Whenever I see them interact with humans and are kind, compassionate, empathetic, when my son will go over to somebody who gets hurt. I mean, he drilled a line drive off of when coaches were pitching 2 years ago when he was 8. He was very good at baseball between like 6 and 10. Drilled a line drive that drilled the head coach. He ran, he hit it, so he started running towards first base and he stopped and like in the middle of the base path and asked the head coach if he was okay. After the game, the coach came up to me, he's like, look, I've been hit a lot of times in the history. He's been doing it for 30 years. He's like, I've never had a kid just stop and do that. And I bring that up to my son every day. Like, do you know how good of a person you are? Even though you're so competitive and baseball is your passion, like you did that, the humanity of it versus the thing. So I try to focus on those things. People are blown away when they hear that I don't like conflict, because on public stages and in podcasts, especially because I always talk about innovation and breaking things, seemingly I like it. So there's different versions. I think the other thing for everybody who's listening is like, look, a very important thing back to judgment is I don't make assumptions about anybody. Like every person I know that I don't know, I make almost no assumptions. You don't know if their aunt. I'll give you an example of like shit I think about when somebody's judging someone. Like, someone famous like Ryan Reynolds has the best life ever. You don't know if the most important person in that person's life was his aunt, who was a mother figure, and she's been diagnosed with terminal cancer. How do you think that person's walking around right now? Or in your office, like that person got the promotion. They're so lucky. Are they? You don't know that their spouse might be dealing with alcoholism currently right now. I think I'm glad you brought that up. I think another thing that really works for my temperament, for my peace of mind, for my joy, is my lack of capacity to make assumptions about other people's lives. Like there's nobody I think has it great. It's inconceivable. Everyone's a human. It's inevitable. And by the way, even when someone does have it great, and I've had them, people have had them 8-year, 9-year, 6-year, 12-year, 20-year runs. Life is too challenging. I know friends who I know intimately and know well enough to say the following: great 10, 7, 12 years and then boom, child sick. Great 10, 12 years and then boom, father was the rock of the family, gone, heart attack. So, this concept that somebody's got a great life is like just incredibly judgmental and lacks like the nuances I think are required. And I think we are at a hyperbole of this judgment world now. We are full headline reading. We are full cancel culture. We are full assumptions. We are full envy. And I don't think this is a social media thing. This is what's always happened. We're just hearing us talk it out. People in well-to-do neighborhoods for years have envied the person that's the richest or the handsomest husband or people just, really need to get back to like being insular loving themselves, thus allowing them to start to love others. Building off of what you just said, I think it was a theme of everything. Like, books by covers is a real issue in our society right now. I think, for me, I think to your point, I think 90% of your audience will be like, oh, that was interesting. Didn't see that going that way. I think for 10% of your audience, when you just said that, they're like, what are you talking about, Chris? That is Gary. Why? Because they've allocated the time to go deeper. I think, we are really in it in our society right now, politically, socially, nationalism, geopolitically. There's a lot going on. And we're also affected by the last 30 years of parenting, where I do think we overswung too far in certain areas, like 8th place trophies, which has made a lot of people anxious. So what I would say as a final thought is, if you find yourself thinking that in this interview or any other of Chris's interviews, it's definitely what made me think about the world. Like, when I started going through my 20s and 30s and meeting people that I had different thoughts of, and then when I got to double click in, either in person or through content consumption, I'm like, right. And so I think, that will lead to a much happier life. But like the theme of this whole podcast, it starts with yourself. Finding how to not judge yourself for your shortcomings and accept yourself for your shortcomings, and champion and be proud of your strengths is a really nice framework to be able to do it for others, especially your children, your spouse, your parents, and then going to your friends and acquaintances, and then just the world. I think this world desperately needs more civility and warmth, and I think people are looking for others to provide it, and I think back to accountability, it starts with yourself, and so I think you're capable of it. I really do, whether that's therapy or listening to different things or starting a regimen of health or wellness or mindset that gets you to that place. And I think you should do that, because it's a lot more fun to live life happy. Because, final thought, you were dead for a long time, aka not born, and you will be dead forever. And so I think it's a good idea to maximize your 100 years, God willing. And so consider that.